for that, you know, God has called into the area of relationships, and it's not just like boy, girl, or man, woman, but just different facets of relationships. What I know with that is you cannot be called into something that you haven't been tested in. And so that's how I know that came about.
Yeah.
And people should know that just because you discuss that on your channel, it's because you've been through stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's where my story was important to share. My love story was important to share. And it wasn't an easy decision. I said, oh, okay, I'll do this. Then I'm like, God, you made me say that. And now I've said it, it has to be done, because I'm speaking to my producer, and he's like, I wrote it down already. We can't go back. And just being vulnerable enough to share. And the fact that there are different things across the ages that I went through, that you went through, and that there's a lesson in there, that somebody else who was sat in the room or is watching the YouTube channel, a 20-year-old listening to me share how I made silly mistakes in my 20s. I mean, how I considered suicide because of a boy. You know, such stories will make that person go, hiya. And then after that, I don't even know what the boy is doing today. If you ask me where he is, I don't know. You know, things like that. And so I think being open and honest about it took a lot. But in retrospect, just by the vibe at the end of the show, the live show, and from the feedback on the channel, a lot of people are like, where was this? The older people, where was this content 20 years ago? Because I'd have made less mistakes. Others are like, oh, so that's how it's supposed to, oh, so I should not. There are people who are actually engaging more, asking questions. And I also feel that element you've brought about, that people assume that I shouldn't talk about relationships. Then how does it explain people constantly writing to me to ask me what they should do in certain instances? I'm not a therapist. I'm not professionally trained. However, my experiences, because there were many, I could be able to say one or two things about what you need to think about, the kind of questions you need to ask. And that's something we also hold strong on KM Radio. We talk about always remembering that dating is data collection. And to the men who are watching, if you are sat there thinking that I should not ask you many questions, then the problem is with you, because you too should be asking questions. It's data collection, so that I know with the data I've collected whether this is worth taking in or not. I mean, I've wanted to get married since I was 25. Okay. When I hit 25 and it wasn't happening, I wasn't dating someone, I had the most miserable birthday. I was so sad and so upset. And why? Because my mother had gotten married at 25. So, you know, these things, you form them from where you were born. And the way you first understood love, what you think love should be, if you're accepting things, go back and check. What was it like at home? Because it informs the way you behave, either from what you saw or what you never want to see because of how bad it was. The two are the same. And so for me, my mother had gotten married at 25. So in my mind, by 25, I should be getting married. And then I wasn't dating anyone, so I was just like upset. Then after that, I was like, you had a bad birthday because what? You will never have another bad birthday in your life. And I made it my point to celebrate all my birthdays. So we hit COVID, and, you know, nobody's moving around. The help isn't able to come. And suddenly I realized, hey, when's the last time I had to clean my house top to bottom by myself, wash my clothes, cook for myself? Because while I was working those crazy media schedules, I had somebody to come and do that for me. And then I said to myself, Kai Kalekye, you know, you're not ready to get married. Hey, Indio Kazi, what? You need to call yourself into several meetings and build the capacity. And
powerful.
So I actually cognitively chose not to date between that period where it occurred to me, and that was like mid of 2020. And I was like, okay, have the conversations. And that's why I loved being on KM Radio, because now I was asking even things that bother me, I was bringing them up as topics. And it was good, because then I was getting opinions from so many people. There are married people there. There are people who have been in it for 20 years. There are people who've just gotten in it. I mean, it was fantastic.